Are you ready for some smart, plain talk on politics, Israel, and the law? It's the Andrew Parker Show. Let's roll. Welcome to another episode of the Andrew Parker Show. It's episode number 469. We talk politics, Israel, and the law each and every episode, and we welcome you to go to theandrewparkershow.com. That's right, theandrewparkershow.com, where you can like or dislike, but like, subscribe, follow us, check us out on YouTube. It's all there. We have an exciting show for you today. Why? Well, one of the top political raconteurs that you will ever hear from. And as much as I've taught him, he's taught me twofold. As he comes up with these newfangled ideas that actually make sense, but sometimes politicians want to do them, sometimes they don't. He's had a very interesting career and life. At one time, and we worked most closely, when our guest was key staff here, not just in Minnesota, but in the Midwest, for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. That's called AIPAC. Yes, you've probably heard it. You probably hadn't heard it until it was being pilloried about left and right with a bloody nose by those primarily on the left, although now the right's getting in a few haymakers as well. But certainly on the left, public enemy number one for many in the Democratic Party and in the progressive movement. And it's gotten to the point now where it has become mainstream within the Democratic Party. Sad to say. And one of the theses of this episode of the Andrew Parker Show is the prediction by yours truly that the Democratic Party in 2 years will have fully become anti-Israel and anti-Jewish bigots, treating Israel with a unique measure in comparison to any other country in the world. And they will do it through their attack of AIPAC and through their distancing of the U.S.-Israel relationship. We'll hear what our guest thinks of that Andrew Parker prediction. Yes, it is an Andrew Parker prediction show here with our special guest, Zander Abrams. Zander, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Andrew, thank you for having me on. It's been a couple of years.
It has indeed, and we very much enjoyed having you on, but I always enjoy talking with you, Z, because, you give a little bit of a different color to to the issues that we discuss. For a while, you were in the marijuana industry and did some great work in that space. Now, more focused on housing. Tell us what you're up to.
Well, I think that there's been a couple hundred shows since my last appearance on, but the threats to Israel, Iran, the Jewish community, American values, American culture, stronger than ever. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, drawing on my experience working for AIPAC for a number of years, overseeing their operations throughout the Midwest. I would say I don't have any insider knowledge on how AIPAC is operating today, but I understand how they think and how they operate, and still have a number of really good friends that are there now. And then more broadly, I'm really excited to talk with you about housing and what we're doing in the housing space at my company, Artanis, which is Sinatra spelled backwards, which was Frankie's production company. And when we focus on we're in the modular manufactured housing business, And oftentimes when you go to municipalities and you say, hey, we want to build a manufactured housing community, they say, well, what do you mean, a trailer park? And so we formed Artanis with the idea of mid-century, post-World War II, nuclear family, morning again in America, white picket fence. And then over the last
I
year...
love that. You know, I was raised in the mid-century modern idiom of architecture and, frankly, of thought with my father, who was a fairly well-renowned internationally architect, and who worked for Eero Saarinen, the king or godfather of mid-century modern, next to Frank Lloyd Wright.
Right. So we're been active I'm back in the government space on our emergency community platform, and so I'm happy to dive into that for what we're doing and working with the administration in order to push forward its beyond FEMA agenda.
Is it kind of rat pack housing? I mean, Sinatra back. I mean, you know, that could be interesting. Interesting concept.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, Frank had an aesthetic. Sammy, Dean,
Yeah.
Peter Lawford, and it was a comfortable, all-American, pro-American value ethos. I mean, they had fun, they drank, they sang, they caused ruckus, but at the end of the day, I mean, it was great American programming for the American viewer. And so we really bring that ethos forward in what we're doing. And the only person that's gotten that Artanis is Sinatra spelled backwards was when we put our proposal in front of, I'm not sure if you know Tony Fabrizio. He's Trump's pollster.
Yeah,
he won Trump 3 elections.
Yeah.
So a mutual friend of ours sent our material to him, and he said to her, Cookie, I can't get your boy's stuff out of my face. It's orange logo, Sinatra backwards.
I love that.
It took someone like Fabrizio. So we'll get into all of that.
Beautiful.
But where do you want to start the conversation?
Well,
Andrew?
you know, I want to talk about the world and where the United States fits. I want to talk about the Jewish people and where the United States fits with the Jewish people as well. Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu launched this war against Iran. They did it with the backdrop of wokeness having a decade or more of running room already under their feet, and the progressive movement in force. And they did it with all of us, at least, who care about real peace, who care about world peace, and who know that it will never happen with Iran having a stranglehold in the Middle East and the instability in the Middle East. The question I have is whether AIPAC is going to be able to pivot to get away from the consistent battering from the progressive woke movement in its hate toward the Jewish people and in particular toward the state of Israel.
So I spent an early stretch of my career at AIPAC, and 15 years ago, when we were making the case about Iran's nuclear program and its maligned activities throughout the Middle East, we were always met with the counter argument of, you're being an alarmist. This can't be true. You're trying to start wars. You're a warmonger. And where we sit today is Iran came to the negotiating table saying, we had 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, and we can create 11 bombs next week if we want. That's our starting position for negotiations. And all of this with the backdrop of the maligned activity, separate from what's going on with Hezbollah, separate from the funding of Bashar al-Assad and the genocide of the Syrian people, separate from the Houthis. You strip all of that away and you still just have, hey, they have a nuclear program.
From October 7 and Hamas.
You strip all of that away and you say, okay, just the nuclear program. And you say, well, they are a genocidal terrorist regime that's building a nuclear weapon. And this president has been very clear that's never going to happen.
And by the way, to be clear to everyone listening, when you do an analysis of this, that is based on geopolitical, rational thinking, you can throw that out the window because that's not who we're dealing with. This is a religious, tyrannical, despotic, zealous regime that is not grounded in rational geopolitical thought.
They view their regime in terms of centuries. We view our political priorities in 2-year cycles. And so that brings out a very different calculus for how we confront these issues. And I would say up until the JCPOA, the Iran deal, Congress and American policy have been pretty uniform on a heavy sanctions regime against Iran. And after the Iran deal went into effect, it was a delay mechanism. It was not a solution. It had sunsets. These ballistic missiles that I believe are an existential threat to Israel's existence were expressly allowed under the JCPOA.
Yes, it gave a runway for these missiles that are now being launched on the heads of those in Tel Aviv and those in Haifa and those in the kibbutzim across the state of Israel. But worse yet is the JCPOA was a runway to a nuclear weapon. It gave the ability, yes, off in the distance, a few years, which now are upon us, by the way, but it gave that runway.
Well, this was the calculus of the Obama administration. Like it or not, this was what their calculus was. People are rational, and at the end of the day, Iran wants to join the community of nations and have wealth, and if they can get access to free markets, they're going to moderate their behavior. They're going to stop being radical Islamists, and they're going to moderate, denuclearize, and at the 10-year point, it's not going to matter that they have a zero threshold breakout time for a nuclear weapon because they'll moderate. As you can see today, there's only one way for moderation for this regime, and it's not through deals, agreements, and access to cash flow. What is significant is the Khamenei job. That Khamenei's death is not just a structural shift. It's a real tactical win. And the proxy architecture that Iran has built up over the last 40 years, you can see how quickly it's been dismantled. I think that one of the takeaways that we saw with the death of Hassan Nasrallah and the leaders of Hezbollah is like how highly centralized the leaderships tend to be for these regimes, and that it's not like the United States where we have layers of government and deputies and farm teams and systems and processes and a constitution. I mean, you start killing the people at the top of the food chain, there's real consequences for its structural cohesion. And so I am this has been a masterclass by the Israelis and the Americans in terms of bringing back targeted assassination programs in a real way that creates deterrence.
True, but missiles continue to drop on Tel Aviv, all the way to the south of Israel, and the complete country is blanketed, and people are having to live with that, and this is post-assassination.
Mm-hmm. There was a gentleman who used to be very common on the AIPAC speaking circuit, and his name was Ari Sachar. And Ari Sachar worked
I just
for
heard
Raphael.
him on the radio the other day. He was like the genius of the Iron Dome. I mean,
he worked for Raphael, and he was the chief weapons designer for Iron Dome.
Yeah,
and he would say he was a great guy, Orthodox Jew. He had a dozen kids.
Yeah,
and his story is remarkable. But he had a great line, and he said the Iron Dome is probably Raphael's least marketable technology. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. It's like a piece of artwork. Why would you say Iron Dome doesn't really have a commercial market? And he said, it's an interesting take. He said, no other country would tolerate rockets being fired at it. Any other country, if you're hit with a rocket, you go in and you take out the regime that's firing rockets at you. But Israel, that's really the only use case or the market for it, and the most stressful situations, because Israel is supposed to live under these conditions, and because Israel has always been strong, and because it's okay if Jews die. It was an interesting paradigm to think.
That gets us to the second point that I wanted to discuss, and that is the relationship of the United States to the Jew. The United States relationship to the Jew, because it has changed. It has evolved. And where it sits today is a bit scary. As the United States loses its moral compass, and I would argue it has done so because of the education system that we have in this country, and the shift that the leaders of that system have made to the left, far leftist, woke, progressive movement. And I'm talking about teachers. I'm talking about the unions, the public education unions. I'm talking about higher education and the money that has flowed in and all of the professorial chairs and seats that outright anti-Semites hold. This entire education system has basically destroyed the moral compass for at least a couple of generations, who are now in their teens and in their 20s and are showing that ugliness here in the United States. I'm not talking about, Yemen or Sudan or even, quite frankly, Austria. Decades and generations of anti-Semites in Austria. I don't know. What do we do with this new relationship that the United States has with the Jew? Now, people will dispute it and say, "Oh, what do you mean? It's the golden era for Judaism, and everyone's respected." And bull.
What I brought up with my mom the other day, so her father came over to the United States when he was 8 years old from Russia in the 1920s. And what I told her was, Zaidi, he wasn't fleeing the Nazis when he came over. He was fleeing the communists. Yeah. And I think that this long time tango with Marxists, communists, Islamists, and Jews is nothing new. What is new is they have oxygen again to breathe. It feels like it's a pendulum. And I would say we had a really great run from post-World War II up until the early 21st century. And I think that time, if you studied it...
When 6 million, get murdered, sometimes somebody feels bad for you. And that'll last a while. But that now is gone.
Well, you take a look at the history of our people from like the 15th century to present. There was a lecture I attended that was about like great Jewish philosophical minds. So it wasn't about religion, but it was like, okay, what do Jews mean as a people and as a group? And one of the biggest themes that I took from it, and it started, I think, like early 16th century, so in the 1500s. Every 100 years, there is a mass extinction attempt against Jews, and everything resets. And you know what else is like clockwork? Your friend who's like, I hate Jew, or I dislike the Netanyahu government. And
yeah, it's the
I think this, but
yeah.
So those folks have existed as long as Jews have existed within the Jewish community, who think that, and now it's new because of Israel, but the pattern used to be Jews that would side against the Jewish community, thinking that it would ingratiate them to the ruling class. And every single time, those people were the first to be killed. Without question. They were the first ones that once the junta got going again, they would be who's targeted. And so these folks think that they're the outlier and that they're different and that they're special and they bring a new perspective to it and they can relate. But the anti-Israel Jew, or Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, when people say Jew, they really or when people say Israel, they really just mean Jew. So be it the anti-Israel Jew or the
said that?
Yeah, Martin Luther King said when people criticize Israel, they really mean Jew.
Yeah, I've heard the statement, but I didn't know that King said it. That's good to learn.
Yeah. So these folks, their tale is old as time. They've always existed, and we're in this cycle. So what's different? What's different is the most powerful nation in the history of the world regardless of what you hear on the noise and on the margins, by and large, the United States government stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel. I've been on Capitol Hill a lot for our emergency housing initiative and doing some work with the government for both reforming FEMA as well as powering the nuclear agenda in terms of the mass amount of construction projects that needs to be engaged in workforce housing. And I will tell you, Andrew, walking up and down the halls of Cannon, Rayburn, Longworth, Russell, Hart, the amount of pro-Israel signs and October 7th signs up around offices is the number one most common sign you'll see. So while you sit out in the streets and you're in Minneapolis and you see all this awful stuff, it is awful. But by and large, Congress still stands with the Jews.
All right, it's good to know. It's good to know, but I just have to add, and I don't want to pour cold water on the idea, but we are headed, and it's not a level straight line. It is an exponential hockey stick curve. We are headed toward very few, if any, of those Democratic elected official offices having such signs. The Democratic Party has completely pivoted from where they were. People who used to have not just their vote, but their voice unequivocal in support of the U.S.-Israel relationship have diminished, I believe, to a minority in the Democratic Party. But worse yet, it is going to be an avalanche from here. Why? Because the electorate will not allow them to take that position. And those that were in the Democratic Party where they did stand up to it, they're resigning. They're retiring. They're gone. Now it is a Democratic Party that has normalized Israel hate, has normalized Jew hate, where it can be discussed openly. And it's a scary proposition. But the reason that I say 2 years is because if you take a look at the recent Gallup poll of electorate across the country, the support for Israel has now flipped. More support for the Palestinians, for those heinous murderers of October 7th, Hamas and the Palestinians that support Hamas. They are getting support over the Israelis, over Israeli policy, but as you have just pointed out, over the Jew, because that's really what it's about. And if one of the main parties in this country flips to that point, where do we go from there? And by the way, it's not as if the Republicans are so wonderful. You know, they've got a whole wing of the party, the Tucker Carlson wing. That
so I have a question about that. I have an idea about that.
Yeah.
I'm curious your take. So we say since World War II, but you know and I know it has, we haven't enjoyed pure bipartisan support in Congress since World War II. It really started in the 80s, 90s when things started heating up. And we've enjoyed this for 30 years, 20, 30 years, where Republicans and Democrats stand together for Israel. But now it's kind of started to devolve into a partisan thing.
Yeah, it was 80%, 80% of the whole milieu.
Yeah, now it's okay, 13% among Democrats and 75, 80% among Republicans. What if we start seeing this tide shift on the right with that woke Reich segment? And although it's not clear if he's going to run for re-election, but I don't think J.D. Vance has gone on the record and said definitively.
I don't like Vance. So I'm saying it here, right now. Now I could change because Vance may pivot. But no, Vance is no.
Parties distinguish each other. That's what they do. They live. Parties exist to win elections. They don't exist to create policy. Parties exist solely to win elections, and the parties have to distinguish themselves against each other. And so, what if, do you think there could be a world we're at the low watermark right now with Democrats, and then as people like J.D., Tucker, Marjorie Taylor Greene start gaining traction, then Democrats start using being pro-Israel as a distinguishing point. In other words, the Republican Party starts to be infected, and then because every party is against whatever the other party is for, that Democratic support for Israel actually over the next 2 to 4 years becomes higher as it erodes in the Republican.
Interesting concept, but no, I don't think so. And one of the main reasons is when it comes to the Jews, there's an exception. All rules are broken, and it doesn't work that way. People who are, blood enemies have never had an agreement on anything will agree on one thing. It's the Jews' fault.
Oh, yeah. Then Santa Monica this morning. So I live in Marina del Rey, Venice. Santa Monica this morning, there was graffiti about killing Jews and tying Jews to the KKK, which is interesting because whenever I look at this stuff, I try to understand, like, what's the political persuasion of the person pushing it? And when it comes to Jew hatred, you never know. Like, it's
could come from
okay.
Anywhere.
Are they white colonialists? Are they discrete minorities? Are they too powerful? And the notion, I just want to be able to criticize Israel. It's the most criticized country in the entire world. There's a couple of hundred UN resolutions criticizing Israel.
Yeah.
But what I always challenge people on about legitimate criticism of Israel is your criticism related to the conversion issues, to Netanyahu's subsidies of the Haredim, the issues around military service, issues around power and land use and the welfare system in Israel? Or is your issue about Israel the fact that it exists and Jews run it? Because those are two one group is totally fair criticisms about Israel.
Yeah.
One segment is about its legitimacy to exist as a country.
Well, and that's a central problem, but you will never run out of the Jew hater. And there was a time when it had to be camouflaged. It had to be disguised as something else or something less than an open Jew hatred. But that doesn't even exist anymore. You now, as I've said, can, in normal discourse, even at a highfalutin Hollywood cocktail party, be an open anti-Semite. And, that guy's an open anti-Semite. Look at all the people around him who want to associate with him. You'll have a big crowd. So
how do you feel the tone is in Minnesota right now? Like, where do you feel the elect? Because I'm out here in California, and Los Angeles is the second or third largest Jewish population in the United States, and I feel like as a community we feel under attack. As an individual, I haven't really experienced anything too bad, but as a community, I feel like we feel very much under attack.
Well, let me tell you. Let me first comment before I talk about Minneapolis. Let me first comment. It hasn't gotten bad enough. You may feel under attack, but as Ed Koch said, and I quote often on this show, after he lost to David Dinkins, unbelievably, he lost to David Dinkins. He said, "The people have spoken. They must now be punished." And they weren't punished enough, so they had to live through 4 years of Dinkin. It became the murder capital of the world, New York City. And then Rudy Giuliani comes in, and saves the day. All right. But the point is, the Jewish community continues to vote for the Democrat who openly hates them. And those Jews in L.A. who you're talking about bring this upon themselves. Things must get much worse, though, before they wake up. Much worse. So what we're experiencing now is going to go on for a while and get worse and worse and worse. And then Mamdani will get elected. No, that's ridiculous. That'll never happen in New York City. Are you kidding me? Okay. You get the picture. In terms of Minneapolis, And now, a word from our sponsors. A record of success second to none. Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm, the numbers tell the story. The last 5 cases our lawyers have brought to trial have resulted in million and multi-million-dollar verdicts for our plaintiff clients and 0 defense verdicts for our defense clients. Put simply, we try cases and we win cases. Hi, I'm Andrew Parker. At Parker Daniels Keyboard, we take our work personally and we go the extra mile. That is why some of the biggest law firms, locally and nationally, send cases to us to handle when they can't. If you have a challenging and critically important business or personal legal dispute that must be favorably resolved, whether regarding a contract matter, a business divorce, a real estate dispute, an employment dispute, a civil rights or defamation matter, plain talk, if it's a big deal, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard. Wise counsel, winning results. Go to parkerdk.com. Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you. It's unbelievable. We did a number of shows right before the recent election in which all 13 of the Minneapolis City Council members were up for election, as well as the mayor. So it was a big deal. And I had been involved early on with some of the groups that were fighting back finally against the socialist, what is it called? JDC, or, the
Justice Democrats.
Yeah, the Justice Democrats. And they're so far left progressive to the point of, what they did, and they control, by the way, the Minneapolis City Council. And so what they've done most recently, just for example, to give you an idea, they've called for the normalization of relations with Cuba and to lift the embargo of Cuba at this particular time. This is what they're focused on, and to urge Europe to stop doing business with Homeland Security here in the United States and to completely open the borders. All right. So, and if you oppose it, it turned into a fist fight effectively, and not literally, but effectively at the Minneapolis City Council. These are the people that were elected by the electorate here in Minnesota. Suffice it to say, the percentage of Minneapolitans who support the state of Israel it might creep into double digits, maybe. And it is, and the crazy thing in the end is that the state of Israel is liberal and progressive in so many ways. Right. The state of Israel is grounded in values that the United States and freedom and liberty all are first principles. And these fools just continually miss the point.
Well, it's like that famous moment with Douglas Murray and Dave Smith on the Joe Rogan podcast, where it's like this guy has committed his entire career to talking about Israel and talking about Jews. And he said, okay, have you ever been there? And he looked at him like, wait, what? That's an offensive question. Why would I? And I was like, this isn't like as an astrophysicist, me visiting the moon in order to be a credential to talk about the moon, it's like you spend like a couple of years talking about a place you should go and visit. It's a nice spot. Like, how can you intelligently talk about a border crossing if you've never been to a crossing? And like, how can you actually tell me the difference between an outpost and a settlement and just a regular development within the appropriate areas if you've never actually been there? These aren't discrete parts of the world.
Yeah, how can you talk about these neighborhoods that are across the street from one another shooting? I mean, how do you even know the proximity of them?
Well, and the fact that this is an issue for local electeds, I mean, there's absolutely zero reason why this should be a defining issue in any type of government platform about what your federal government's relationship is with a foreign country that is the 10th largest recipient of foreign aid in the United States, that is far behind any major Arab and Chinese power in terms of lobby spend in the United States, where Jews make up like a marginal percentage of the population. Like, the fact that this is an issue is tremendous. I mean, there's an old lobbyist for AIPAC, Esther Kurz, and she used to be on like Charlie Wilson's staff.
She's still at it. Is she still at it?
She's still there?
Oh, yeah.
She said, like, back when I was in college, she was like, listen, a great lobby is like a sunflower. We wither in the dark, or we flourish in the dark, and we wither in the daylight. And I think that the more that people see the issue and have to take a position on the issue, the worse it is. What I would challenge the Minneapolis City Council on, although I don't live in Minnesota, but my family has been in Minnesota for 5 generations on some lines. Like, what relevance do you have? Like, why would I listen to anything that you have to say?
And that is the point of this.
What businesses are based in Minneapolis?
Right.
Who's growing businesses? Who's hiring? Who's doing development? I saw, again, St. Paul, buildings are trading 13% down from last year for skyscrapers. The Wells Fargo building that was beautiful with a gold lobby, and what, it traded for like $12 million, $9 million?
No, it's a disaster. From the days of Wendy Anderson with the muskie or whatever he was holding on the front of Time to where Time magazine, to where we are today, it's not recognizable, and it's a disgrace. It's a complete
Why would someone like me go
and a disgrace?
Why would someone like me, where I have a business, we're in the housing business, we hire people, we do developments, we look for places to do business, we like going into other states. I've spent the last year focused on helping to reform FEMA housing for people that are displaced by natural disasters, where there's about 2.5 million Americans living on housing assistance, 1.5 million for at least 18 months are living in trailers or hotels or motels, and 40% end up homeless long-term if you go through government housing. And so over the last year, we've been going to state emergency managers. The president's agenda has been, we want to defederalize and we want to push authority down to the states. And I've been able to sit down with the governor's office and the Speaker of the House of Tennessee, in North Carolina, in South Carolina, in Virginia, under the previous Youngkin administration, although we still are in business with the Spanberger administration. Go to these southern states, and how you are met and how you are received and how you are treated is diametrically opposed to how, if you're a private business guy wanting to do a development in Minneapolis or in Minnesota. It's really astounding.
And
well, there was a state legislator in New Hope who said, I forget his name. He's a career defense attorney, and he said to the paper, I don't understand why employers aren't coming here. We have the best employee benefits in the country with family medical leave and paid leave. And I was like, employers don't, I mean, we care about that to the extent that we can recruit and retain good talent. But in terms of where we can operate, the bottom line is the bottom line. And if we're going to be able to operate in a lot better conditions, tax-wise, regulatory-wise, government relations-wise, in places like Wyoming, where you take a look at nuclear power investment, do you know who's not getting a nuclear power facility or getting any type of federal investment? The state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Brookfield alone is getting 80, so it's 10 reactors for $80 billion. And it'll be 43,000 workers over the next decade building these AP1000 facilities.
They're not coming to Minnesota.
They're coming to South Carolina.
Yeah.
TerraPower just got permitted in Wyoming. These are thousands of jobs. They're not coming to Minnesota.
No, it's the hollowing out of the economy, of the business community here in the state of Minnesota. We are living through it. We are witnessing it. It takes a while because Minnesota was a great state. And so, it had foundation to it. It had glue, but not anymore. And the hollowing out is happening, and it's happening more and more rapidly while these idiots sit on the city council and are talking about, their own personal attitudes regarding global international geopolitics. It's ridiculous, and not a one of them. Now, listen, we were able to push back. Jacob Fry is the mayor. He's viewed as a Republican moderate, effectively, here in Minneapolis. It's unbelievable. But
that's not how he's viewed outside of Minnesota. Everyone views him as the staple boy for the woke left beta movement. And
yeah,
in Minneapolis,
but I'm telling you, if you look at the city council, they are at least half, a little more than half, are far, far left of him. Let me read to you in the Minnesota Star Tribune, came out last night. This was regarding the Minneapolis City Council. The Minneapolis City Council devolved into chaos Thursday. This would have been yesterday, during a debate over whether it should spend time weighing in on global politics, like the U.S. blockade of Cuba. The meeting went off the rails as the council considered two resolutions. They were the two that I brought up earlier. While all council members are left of center, shocking. I mean, left of center, they're like tipped over the cliff over on the left. It's, right. I mean, there's no more runway. The debates between progressive and more moderate factions, I'm quoting here the article, are as spirited as those between Republicans and Democrats. So the crackpot left are the Republicans. The Looney Tune off the reservation, can't see them, they're so far left. They're the Democrats. Okay, so that's the fight that we're having. And they hate each other. They're screaming at each other. They're calling each other children. And
so who's the leader of the Democratic Party in Minnesota? Who is the leader? Is it Amy? Is it Tim?
It definitely is Amy. It definitely is Amy. And she's, figuring out, tongue to finger, put it in the air, figure out which way the political winds blow. Oh, it's anti-Israel today. I think I'm going to be anti-Israel. That's Amy. And she won't come on the show. She won't even talk to me anymore. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah.
You guys used to be really close.
I know. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. She does not want to defend her position because she knows she can't. And
but you have everyone on. Like, everyone has come on the show.
Yeah, Tina came on. No, she won't anymore.
Dean.
But she came on 3 times. Dean's been on. He just was on. Angie Craig has been on a number. But they think she's a right-wing Nazi. I mean, Angie Craig. She's a Democrat, a liberal left-wing Democrat, but in today's world of the Democratic Party, she is a right-wing conservative.
I found Angie highly impressive. When I was working for AIPAC, she was running for the first time, and our mutual friend Charlie set up the first meeting. And Charlie was like coming off a hip surgery, and he was using a walker. But it was important for him to set up the first meeting and for us to get Angie on the record. And remember her race, she was running against John Klein. And she said, okay, I'm probably going to lose. She said to me, I'm probably going to lose, but I think John Klein's going to retire next cycle.
Yeah.
So my name ID will be up. And then like a couple of weeks later, or a month later, John Klein announces his retirement one cycle earlier. And then there she goes. And I've found Angie to be highly impressive. I would love if she became the next senator from Minnesota.
Well, we're gonna try to make sure of that.
How does it look? Because Peggy Flanagan has said some pretty outrageous things. Just reading it here from Los Angeles, where she said, I'm not going to take any money from corporate PACs or from AIPAC.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so no corporations and no Jews.
Yeah.
I mean, we shouldn't be an issue that you're talking about.
It's exactly, but that is not just her race. It certainly is with her, and it's with everyone else who is in the Democratic Progressive Movement, which is nearing 1/2 of the Democratic Party. And it's going to continue to fall off that cliff because of the Gallup poll results that I'm talking about. It's good politics for the Democrats. And in fact, it's bad politics for them to go otherwise. Now, AIPAC would tell you that's not true. Look at the Democrats who do take funding from AIPAC and support the U.S.-Israel relationship. They are winning. They are not losing. And I concede that. That's accurate. And, I hope the Democratic Party comes back to sanity. But
the AIPAC PAC was based off of the idea that there needs to be real incentives for electeds to take strong positions for Israel, and there needs to be real incentives to not do it. And what AIPAC was strongly criticized for by its membership and from people within the pro-Israel tent is your tent is too big. In other words, it's like you guys let in too many people, and you let in how dare you allow two-state solution person in your tent? We should be one state. Or how dare you support Nancy Pelosi because she supports abortion? Or how dare you? Your tent is too big. I mean, the bar is so low in order to get back, in order to get funding, in order to get contributions, in order to be supported broadly by the community, that you really have to be an extremist to not get an AIPAC endorsement in some type of AIPAC engagement or from AIPAC members separately, so that you take a look at these Chicago races, and even though AIPAC supported candidates didn't win every race, that's not what success was about. Success was about the antagonists to Israel and the antagonists to Jews
keeping
not
them out
getting
of Congress.
Elected. It doesn't matter who's going to win as long as they're pro-Israel.
The problem is, at the end of the day, that the Democratic Party allows open racists, open bigots to wrap themselves in the banner of the party, to actually get endorsed, to actually have leaders of the party come out on the stump with them. It is a disgrace. If David Duke sought the Republican nomination today, he would be run out of town on a rail, just like the Republicans did with Steve King in Iowa a few years ago, because of his comments regarding blacks.
He was stripped of his committeeship.
He was.
I remember I was covering Iowa for AIPAC at the time.
Yeah.
He had a Confederate flag on his desk, and they said, we don't want that.
And the Republican Party took a stand. The Democratic Party has allowed, not just allowed, has supported, endorsed, wrapped themselves around Jew haters consistently. And it has become a powerhouse place for that type of movement within that party. One of the two parties of the United States is now tipped over. And it's a scary proposition, but it is reality. AIPAC is pushing back, and the Justice Democrats and the other whack job Jew haters know that AIPAC is pushing back, know how effective AIPAC is, and so they are now openly going after AIPAC, and their intent is to destroy AIPAC. They're not doing it with...
I mean, at its core, AIPAC is founded on the premise that American citizens are entitled, have a right to their First Amendment of speech and political expression, and that they stand up as Americans.
The first principles of the founding of this country is what AIPAC does. It is one of the most essential pieces of a democracy.
So you hear Andrew them say, the opposition and AIPAC's detractors say, well, AIPAC shouldn't be doing this and they shouldn't be involved. So let's say what it is. You think that American citizens who put their personal time and their personal dollars to express an opinion that they as Americans believe is an important issue should not be involved in the political process because you have an issue with the nature of their ideas or with the character of the people that say it. I mean, that's what it is. It's about disenfranchisement of Americans. They should just say it. But instead, there's this canard of, instead of Jew, let's call it Israel.
Of Jewish Americans. Yeah. No, that's what they say. Z, this has been a fantastic discussion. We got to do it again, and we've got to do it sooner than the time and space that we allowed to arise between your last visit and this one.
Well, let's agree that we'll do another one before show 569.
Okay. That's good. That's good. I'm going to try to get I'm going to get yeah, I'm going to try to get our friend Danny
Dan from
on
San
the
Francisco.
show from San Francisco,
Oh, listen, you'll love Dan from San Francisco.
Long time listener. Yeah. Not
Oh,
first
well, I
time
mean,
caller, but
he officed out of Mark Kennedy's office in the
That's
original
right.
Parker Rosen digs.
That's right.
Well, not the original, but like your second office.
Yeah, our second office. Our second office. Parker Rosen now just, drop the name. Dan Rosen, now U.S. Attorney, state of Minnesota.
Yeah, Dan from Miami.
Yeah.
Dan from Aventura. Dan from Aventura. I was like, oh, he's the U.S. Attorney for what state? Yeah. Listen, cut that one out of the show.
Yeah, he's now in hand-to-hand combat. No weapons. It's fisticuffs with the federal district court bench.
I love his press conferences. He just he just has these great little non sequiturs. He had this line and he just goes, "If you're committing fraud in Minnesota, now's really not a good time for you to be here."
Well, all I can say is I've said this to many that at this particular time in history, with all that is going on and happening, and the intersection that occurs at the U.S. Attorney's Office, there is no one better to be in that seat than Mr. Daniel Rosen, and he will serve us well.
There's plenty of work for him to do with the fraud in Minnesota. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
people now, it's controversial when I tell people I'm from Minnesota. Because what I would say is, listen, before George Floyd, like if you would have told me before the whole George Floyd thing that being from Minnesota was going to be the epicenter for fraud, racial violence, rioting, I would have said, do you mean Michigan? Like, Minnesota?
Yeah. No, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And these fools on the city council, and love our mayor. He won't come on the show again either. He came on before he was initially elected. By the way, Z, I will tell you, there were 7 running for the mayor's seat at that time, and I invited all of them to come on, and only he came on, and he won. Now, I think that's a 1-to-1 direct correlation between the Andrew Parker show and winning in a broad field.
We could just edit politicians of past, like put Ember Reichgott judge on the
young.
Yeah. Next to you.
Yeah.
Amy Koch, Minnesota politicians of past. I wish there was a better farm team. I keep trying to I really like this kid Harry Niska. I think he's been pretty sharp, but you take a look at those congressional seats, and I was like, I don't know what type of bench you guys think that you have, but it's not like the golden era where it was like, okay, in the legislature you had Tim and Eric just sitting in the legislature, in the state legislature. There's just not that kind of farm team, at least for Republicans. And the Democrats, like it or not, they're able to put out candidates.
Well, and Michelle Tafoya.
Yeah, how are we feeling about her race?
I'm not sure. I think she can. Maybe she can beat Peggy Flanagan. And by the way, I think Flanagan is going to give Angie Craig trouble because of the whack job vote in Minnesota and the growth of that whack job vote. And Peggy Flanagan speaks to the whack job vote. And so, when you've got a candidate that can speak whack job, you have a place in Minnesota.
My dad's favorite governor was Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. We elect Jesse Ventura, we elect Al Franken, we jokesters.
It's crazy. So our lobbyists, our lead federal lobbyist for Artanis, for the last year plus, we've been working with Norm. We hired Norm Coleman to lead our federal lobby.
Great.
And just hearing the stories from Norm, and when and Norm is like, he's the genuine article. He's incredible.
Yes.
And so just some of the other lobbyists just don't know him from the same contacts that I know him or the people on our team. And it's kind of like, okay, I get it, because he was only mayor for like 4 years or something,
right.
years, and then he was senator for 6 years.
Yeah,
he's been a federal lobbyist for over 20 years.
Yeah,
and so people think of him in that way, and it's like, no, Norm Coleman was like one of the most charismatic, engaging, hardworking,
and
Democrat at times, Republican at other times.
Yes, he was fabulous, and he had the guts in the Senate to be the leader on going after the United Nations. He was the, at the point of the spear of carrying the water of the United States to the United Nations and pouring it over their head.
Yeah. No, Norm was like the genuine article. So you think about the talent that we had in Minnesota in the 90s and early 2000s, where it's Eric Paulson, Tim Pawlenty, Norm Coleman, like on and on and on.
And it all started with Boschwitz and Dernberger.
Yeah, Rudy Boschwitz, Dernberger. It's like the list goes on and on and on. And then now, Emmer's great.
Yeah, but then we had the guy who got caught with the young girls in the swimming pool.
I don't want to guess on the name because I don't want to say the wrong guy. I don't want to mistakenly say the wrong person.
It starts with a G. I can't believe I can't remember it, but I'm blanking on it for some reason. But that was anyway. So Z, we're gonna have you back, and it's really been fun talking. And we got a lot. I have a whole list of other subjects I want to talk about, not least of which is immigration and that whole impact here in Minnesota. Another embarrassment, based on the positions, the sanctuary state, the sanctuary city.
I remember I went to Tanglin. I went to Hopkins Public Schools.
Yeah.
I was in Tanglin Elementary.
Tanglin. I was the first class at Tanglin in first grade after they built the building. So
Tanglin
the first class. It's very close, to my heart.
So I'm in Tanglin, and it's like I'm in 5th grade, maybe 6th grade, and all of a sudden, all of these Somalis would show up.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait, there's 7 siblings named Abdullahi, and they live out of like a structure off 73. And it was like, how is it they have 7 siblings across 5 grades or 4 grades? It makes no sense. And so while I was a kid, like in adolescence and coming up, that was in the first major wave of Somali immigrants into Minnesota.
Well, and it's, I don't know, Trump has an opinion on the Somalis and on Somalia, the country. He hasn't spoken kindly of them. But I don't like it personally. I just don't think it's right. It's not like every Somalian is a fraudster. It's not like, all fraudsters are Somalian. No, there's not a perfect, but it's a pretty big percent. I mean, it's troubling. It's a little, you can't ignore it. I mean, it's a little troubling.
I'll give you how I think about the issue in that, you can't, I don't fault the individual necessarily for doing it. There's a clear incentive structure for them to try to perpetrate fraud.
You don't fault the individual for
doing it. But who I fault,
criminal.
But who I fault is the fact that we have a system in place where there's no punishment. And where you say, because of your identity, because you came from, like, sure, I fault them. They should go to prison.
Rule of law, forget about that.
The rule, but I'm just saying, I think that the real criminal in the entire fraud regime is not the individuals committing fraud, although they should go to prison. That the real criminals are the bureaucrats and the government officials that allow the system to continue on this way for them.
Yeah,
and that there's 2 sets of rules.
This is what I was talking about before. Keith Ellison, I mean, for him to say, "Oh no, I had nothing to do with it," it's not. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. Same for Tim Walz, but nobody cares about Tim Walz anymore.
Indictments are going to come down. I mean, I think you're going to see indictments.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's going to be Keith, but you take a look at how there are government bureaucrats who, what you have to prove is knowledge, right?
Yeah,
like, that's
they
what
look
the hard
the other
part
way.
is.
Yeah, that's
but
what.
But there's knowledge. There's knowledge shown. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some prosecutions coming down for government people, whether or not it touches Walz or Ellison. I don't know.
But I'll tell you, you're not a taxpayer here in Minnesota. I am a taxpayer here in Minnesota. A big fat check going over to the state, and I go out and see these who are pleading not guilty or guilty in court, and they've got that money, that taxpayer money that goes. They got my money. I'm not paying it in to give it over to them.
At least as a California taxpayer. Because I also lived in Chicago previously.
Do you pay a lot of taxes in California, or is it kind of a low tax state?
We're at 13%.
I mean, you got Gavin.
If you make a certain amount of money in California, you keep less than half.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
But we have great weather, and the parks are really nice, and the beach is great. Yeah. In Minnesota, I was like, I don't know what you get.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's a fair point. All right, we got to go. Z, great to see you. We will be in touch. And for everybody still listening,
we're still listening.
Go to theandrewparkershow.com, theandrewparkershow.com. And it's sometimes referred to as an award-winning website. Check it out. Until next time, be kind to your neighbor. For more Smart Plain Talk, go to theandrewparkershow.com. Learn about all of your listening and viewing options. And remember, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. This episode of The Andrew Parker Show is sponsored by Parker Daniels Keyboard and True North Private Investments.
Did your employer make you sign a promissory note when joining the company, and now you want to leave, but you're afraid your firm will pursue you personally for that debt? This is Jesse Keyboard from the law firm Parker Daniels Keyboard. I recently represented a client who had signed such a note, and I was able to get them out of their $500,000 debt to their company, which allowed them the freedom to exit a bad employment situation and enter a much better one. Meeting our clients' objectives is our focus at Parker Daniels Keyboard, and in this regard, we win. Our experienced trial team of lawyers at Parker Daniels Keyboard have secured major victories in state and federal courts across the country and through arbitration. We have the legal expertise in all types of business disputes, labor and employment matters, real estate matters, shareholder disputes, financial transactions, security issues, and appeals. For wise counsel, winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard, a premier litigation law firm that provides efficient, aggressive, and innovative solutions to complex legal problems. Wise counsel, winning results. Go to parkerdk.com.
Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you.